Well, welcome everyone to another edition of the Mindfulness and Resilience Practices. I am one of your hosts, Vivian Hermiz. Along with me is Frank Baird. Hi, Frank.
Oh, hi.
And he will be leading today's session as we always do. Uh, we trade off the topics and we're going to continue our um, deep dive into rest states and how to access them. And I'll leave it to you, Frank.
Thank you. Yeah, so by switching each week, that means this week Vivian gets to rest. So we'll we're going to be talking about rest. So the theme for this month is accessing rest, and tonight's topic is cultivating restful states. So here are some, valuable concepts related to rest. So it's helpful to think of rest as not the absence of activity, it's the presence of particular kinds of activity. Right? Mostly we think of rest as the absence of stress, or rest as the absence of things that I'm supposed to do, I need to do. But it's the presence of either something like leisure time, or we're going to be talking tonight about like the activities that can constitute rest. So the activity of rest is aimed at increasing physical and mental well-being, and rest helps us recover and recharge. So it's really important to appreciate the recover and recharge. So it could be just charge, right? Like if I'm not resting from stress, for example, I could just be charging my battery, my life battery. But I might be recovering also. So like, you do a workout at the gym, or you go running, or you have a day. Rest is an activity to help you recover. They've done a lot of research around rest. I would love to be a rest researcher. Or maybe I'd like to be a rest subject in their studies. So some of this stuff is really intuitive, right? It reduces stress and anxiety. Now sometimes people feel like rest isn't reducing stress and anxiety, but that stress and anxiety, like our tolerance is increased if we get enough rest, if we get enough recovery time or recharging time. Um, but the activity of rest reduces stress and anxiety too. It improves mood, it lowers blood pressure, it eases the unpleasant experiences related to pain, and it improves immune health. And kind of the way we know this intuitively is like when you're tired, everything's harder to bear. So if you've rested enough, and often we talk about rest, especially around sleep. If you're rested enough, all of these things are happening. If you're rested enough, everything in life is more tolerable. There can still be plenty of unpleasantness in life, but our capacity for tolerating it is greatly improved. And sometimes because we're so strong in relation to stressors, we don't even particularly notice them. So rest can happen on its own, but we can increase the benefits and the frequency of rest when we're mindful and intentional about rest activities. So, what I mean by it can happen on its own is at the end of a long day, I sit down and I fall asleep, right? I didn't intend to fall asleep, I didn't mean to fall asleep, but sleep happened. And then when I wake up from that sleep, depending on how long it is and the quality of that sleep, I might feel rested, better rested, well rested. But you may have caught on to this around our conversations around mindfulness and intentionality. If you're mindful and intentional about rest, that means you can cultivate the conditions whereby, I need another word to say other than restful rest, where restful rest can occur. What I think of this is like sometimes people, especially like after a hard day or during a long day, hard day, people will do things like scroll on social media. And because they're not doing the thing they were doing, they think they're resting. And sometimes they are. But if you're intentional and mindful, one of the things you might notice is whether or not scrolling social media is restful. I remember there was a time I play video games, and I play the kind of video games where you have to fight for your life. And I was having some health problems, and I went to my doctor, and the doctor said, "Do you ever relax?" And I said, "Yeah, every day I'm relaxing." Um, and then later I thought about it. What I meant was, what I was thinking about was I'm playing video games. But the kind of video games I was playing weren't relaxing. Like, it turns out they were really, really intense. It was fun, but it wasn't relaxing. And so it wasn't considered something like rest. It was exactly the opposite. So if I was being mindful and intentional about rest, I would have registered that, okay, this is fun, but it's not restful. And if what I need is rest, I need to do an activity or activities that are restful, not just fun or enjoyable. Or I always think of like scrolling social media as like a holding pattern. Maybe it's just the way that I enjoy social media, which is just kind of there's nothing else to do, so I'll do this for a while, and then a while is a long while. Vivian, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, to your point, I want to ask you a question because I once had a client who was like, Vivian, you're going to be so proud of me. I rested. On Sunday, I turned on the music. I pulled up a book and had a tea. And it was so restful. Now, for her, that may have been because rest is relative, right? It's relative to
Yeah.
something, as everything
Mm-hmm.
is. And for her, that was restful. But if you stand back and look at it objectively, there's a lot of activities happening, that are like infringing. And even though them individually, reading a book, listening to lovely music, having a warm cup of tea, all individually can constitute something that allows for rest. I had the feeling that putting the all three together was a bit much. But can you speak something to about the relativity of rest and if I gave her the right advice that like pick one activity?
Well, I think it depends. I think about people who talk about having attention problems, and they'll say things like they need a lot of stimuli to relax. Um, I have attention problems, but I don't have that experience, so I don't know. But to your point about it being relative, you would be the best person to determine if particular activities are restful for you. So I'm thinking of that scenario and I'm going, "Ooh, that sounds really nice." And then it depends on what kind of tea it is. Does it have caffeine or not? What kind of music is it? Is it like ambient music or really soft music? Or is it like really intense? What kind of book is it? Like one of the things I think about social media, so I love TikTok and I need to go to a TikTok recovery group. But there are several kinds of videos that show up on my feed. I love that I get to see lots of puppy videos. Like I really enjoy watching the puppy videos and I'm smiling, like I'm really enjoying this. That lasts about a minute at most, and then I scroll to the next video. And sometimes it might be another dog or cat video. Um, but also in part of the algorithm is apparently I spend too much time watching police chase videos. So I get this relax, relax, wonderful, peaceful thing. And then suddenly I get this thing that is way too stimulating and upsetting. You know, it's like a short video of people yelling. And so that was exactly the opposite of peaceful. So sometimes when people are reading books, for example, they're like, I think of reading as enjoyable, and then it depends on what I'm reading. Because if I'm reading something that's upsetting, I'm not resting. And that's okay. You don't have to rest when you read. What we're talking about here, though, is being mindful and being able to tell if my intention here is to rest this evening, that might influence what I read. I enjoy reading, and I enjoy reading difficult things too, not when I'm resting, though. Though, another thing to keep in mind is I've mentioned here before this thing called opposite action. It's the kind of thing where if anxiety is telling me to think about some things, focus on some things, if anxiety is making my body get tense and configured, I may not know how to thwart anxiety, but this notion of opposite action is do whatever is the opposite that anxiety is telling me or making me do. And so sometimes, maybe, like I'll use the video game as an example. If the video game is opposite to what I'm experiencing during the day, the stress of the day, for example, it could be considered rest. Could be. Again, it's really helpful to make a distinction between enjoyable and restful. Because I also have some video games that are really, you just kind of walk in an environment and it's just kind of wonderful and peaceful. It's the kind of thing, I don't know if you've seen, there are YouTube channels that have like the ambience or ambiance from different video games. And it's like you can just turn on one of these videos and just sit there and listen to the birds in this game or the crickets in this game. So I hope you're getting the idea that if you're mindful and intentional about creating rest, it influences even the things you enjoy. Am I going to drink some herbal tea or some tea with caffeine? Am I going to play this kind of video game or a different kind? Or am I going to do what I've done? I sometimes wonder if this means I'm getting really old. I just like to sit and like not listen to music, not watch anything, just sit and be is the most restful for me until I get impatient or bored, and then it's not so restful. So with mindful awareness and intentionality, we can make adjustments in a given moment to increase rest. And this can be something like a period of rest, like going to sleep at night, and cultivating the conditions that are supportive of deep and refreshing sleep. We can also create conditions like moment by moment. So I think of it like this: in excuse me, in a busy day, a pause to be mindful whenever I stand up from my chair is a bit of rest. Because what I'm pausing is the busyness of my mind, the busyness of my body, right? I'm getting all configured around the thinking that's happening, the emotions that are happening, the physical activity that's happening. And so if I do something like using a transition, like transitioning from sitting to standing, if I remember to be mindful about that, it's a moment of rest. It may only last for the duration of my bringing it to mind and standing up, because then I'm out the door and racing on to the next thing. Or with practice, we learn ways that we can stretch that out. So that's what practice gives us, is more of the skill of noticing what state am I in, what state is my mind in, and what state would I rather be in. So what we're going to do tonight is I was resting on words today. So my words are still resting, and I have to be very quiet or I'll disturb them. What we're going to do today is essentially what's called open awareness. So the playful instruction I'm going to give you is that for this period of time, don't meditate. If you know, in psychology, there are things called paradoxical instructions. You know, it's sort of like when you tell somebody don't think of a pink rabbit, they start thinking of a pink rabbit. So that's happening here when I tell you don't meditate. But the invitation is this. Like, you know, often when we meditate, we get all geared up, we configure our body. Depending, if you're sitting, right, you sit up. Some people like to do that in that pretzel position with their legs crossed on the floor or on a cushion. Here, the invitation is whatever you're doing, just do it. Air quotes around the word just, because just always suggests that something is easy. Don't try to focus your attention to start with. Try to keep track of it though, right? So like open awareness isn't like daydreaming or spacing out. An open awareness practice is my attention can go anywhere and I follow it. So I'm keeping track of where it is when I'm keeping track of it, because what happens is that there's a lot of open space. There'll be a lot of silence in this meditation, and it's really easy for our attention to wander off and for us to be like looking to the left where our attention was and not notice that it went off to the right. And so the invitation here would be, if you notice attention isn't where it was, go find it. Gentle, friendly effort to go find it, and then let it be wherever it is. And then if you need to, you can always use an attention anchor. So an attention anchor would be like breathing or the sound of my voice or some other physical sensation, and how it can help in this kind of a meditation, since it's open awareness. It can be really easy to lose track of attention and then just kind of start thinking, what am I supposed to be doing right now? What am I supposed to be feeling right now? What am I supposed to be thinking right now? My attention was on the left and now it's off to the right. Like, how did it get that right? It's really easy to get caught up and lost. And so then what you could do if you pick an attention anchor at the beginning of the meditation, then anytime you get lost or confused, absorbed into something, when you notice, disengage and bring your attention back to the anchor. So an anchor is always a place you can get reoriented. But in this practice, the invitation is not to use it unless you need it, except as we settle in. So what we're going to do is settle in. Your eyes can be open or closed. I'll be providing some instructions. Notice what happens. When you hear my voice, maybe you'll do what I suggest. Maybe you'll notice what I suggest. Maybe not. That's okay. Just notice what's happening. As best you can, establish a friendly, gentle attitude toward whatever is happening. And then, as always, if you need to or want to stop, stop. So, with that said, let's settle into practice. So if you haven't already, you might find or make a comfortable posture. You can be standing, you can be sitting, you can be lying down, you can be using slow movement. And you might start just by noticing the state you're in. I like what's called a 4-point check-in as a way of finding out where am I and how am I. So first you might bring attention to the environment you're in. And just notice what's going on in the environment. Maybe there are sounds you're hearing. Maybe there are things that you see. Maybe there's temperature in the room or scents. So noticing, acknowledging, I'm in this space. This space is like this. And then you might shift attention to thinking and notice that thinking is happening. If you can, resist getting caught up in the thinking and observe the thinking happening as a process. Thinking is happening. That thinking has contents just for now. Thinking is happening. And then you might shift attention and bring it to the feeling tone you're experiencing in this moment. Is this moment unpleasant, neutral, pleasant? Or it might be a mix of that. This part of my experience is pleasant, this part of my experience is unpleasant. Noticing the feeling tone of where you are and the state you're in. And you might notice if there are any emotions happening. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. Maybe there's one, maybe there are many, maybe they're moving around, or maybe one is the dominant emotion. Again, you don't have to do anything with or to what you're noticing, except keep noticing. And then shifting attention to body sensations, noticing, acknowledging any sensations that are happening anywhere in the body. You might notice the body in its entirety, or attention might move from this location to that location. And so these are the 4 points of the 4-point check-in. The space you're in, the thinking that's happening, the feeling tone and emotions that are happening, the physical sensations that are happening. And now bring attention to breathing. And just for a moment or so, use breathing as your attention anchor. Let breathing be a place to rest attention, or focus or refocus attention. And know that anytime you want or need a place to rest or orient yourself, you can bring attention back to breathing, to feeling breathing happening. And so now here's where I tell you the playful and paradoxical instruction to stop meditating. So be right where you are. Notice where attention is. And as best you can you have the activity of this time be cultivating rest? So, for example, if you are following your attention, if you notice that you're striving or you're trying really hard to pay attention or capture attention, remember opposite action and do the opposite of that, because that's not the right energy for rest. So letting attention be wherever it is, go wherever it goes. Sometimes you might forget to pay attention, and that's okay in this practice. When you notice that you weren't paying attention, make a gentle, friendly effort to pay attention. If you get caught up in some thinking or some emotions or some physical sensations, don't fight it. Don't fight anything. That is never restful. Can you notice and be with whatever's happening? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Noticing where attention is now. If you notice where attention is right now, can you feel rest in it? The quality of rest? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Sometimes that quality might be something like, it's okay that this thinking is happening right now. Or it's okay that my attention is on those sounds happening outside my window. Noticing that where attention is has a big impact on your experience in this moment. Is where your attention is right now a restful place for it to be? If it is, leave it there. And if it's not, what small, gentle adjustment might you make to shift into a more restful state? Noticing where attention is now. Notice where attention is now. If where your attention is focused is restful, enjoy it. And if it's not restful, gently shift the focus of attention to something else. Sometimes it can be helpful to name the restful state, sometimes not. But part of the being mindful of the restful state for me is acknowledging it with words. This is restful. Or something like, I am resting. Or a phrase like, rest is happening. Where is attention now? Can it be okay right now that your attention is wherever it is? Maybe it can be, maybe not. Here's an opportunity to notice and practice. What happens when I tell you that there are 5 minutes left in this practice? Notice what, if anything, happens and what effect it has on rest or resting or trying to rest. And can you orient yourself to making some friendly, gentle adjustments, if needed, to rest? Noticing where attention is now. And notice what happens, if anything, when you hear me say there are now 2 minutes left in this practice. You might notice what effects hearing this have on you, have on you. And can you rest in this time? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. And to conclude our practice for today, if your eyes are closed, you might open them. You might look around the space you're in, move your head. You might shrug your shoulders, stretch, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Yawn if you'd like. And this will conclude our practice for tonight. Thank you for your practice. Here's one comment. Rest is always valuable and never a waste of time. I have to remind myself of this sometimes. Sometimes the thought of rest creates momentary anxiety for me because I question if it's a smart thing to do at the time. We are so geared toward performance, achieving, and doing all the time. Yeah, there's, what was her name? Audre Lorde was a writer. She is the one who created the term self-care, which then got co-opted by capitalism and brands. But she said that resting is an act of resistance. And I like that because the world is always demanding something of us. And there are two ways we can rest: when we collapse because we can't go on, or if we do it deliberately. And I'll add to it, and do it well. So I appreciate that comment, and I'm wondering what some of your experiences were like. Sometimes trying to rest has the same effect of like commanding yourself to relax. I don't know if you've ever done that. It's like, relax. Or at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, I'll go, I want to sleep, which is exactly the opposite energy that cultivates a restful state. Oh, here's a comment. Is good rest going to help me get more deep sleep? Yes, I'm stumbling on that for a bit because deep sleep would be good rest, but also being mindful and deliberate about cultivating rest can facilitate deep sleep. So, for example, one of the things that's talked a lot about these days is sleep hygiene, which is preparing to go to bed, to go to sleep. That depending on what you do, you can ease into the kind of state where sleep comes or not. Again, this depends, but one of the things they talk a lot about is looking at screens when you're trying to go to sleep, that the blue light stimulates the brain. Some people, it doesn't bother them, or some people, it does help them go to sleep. So the key thing here is pay attention and see, is what I'm doing helping with that or not? I like the idea of this has been suggested a lot, is like take an hour or a half hour to prepare for bed. Like often what people think preparing is getting out of your day clothes, brushing your teeth, and getting into bed. And that can certainly be part of it. But if you think of like, how would I occupy an hour or a half hour of time preparing for bed? Part of it is slowing things down. So some of the things people talk about is dimming lights, moving a lot more slowly and intentionally. So even if they're changing clothes or brushing their teeth, they're doing it much more slowly. And the slowness of this helps the brain slow down even more and can help the body start to relax. Any other comments or questions? Sleep is reportedly the biggest challenge in modern society, because you can have lights on all the time. There's, the internet is always alive. There's always something you could be doing. And we're often doing that either because we don't feel like we can rest, or because we mistakenly think that's rest because it's not. We're doing otherwise.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna take up sleep, because even things like that you don't realize, like the quality of your mattress, the room temperature. So we're supposed to sleep in cooler temperatures. And you think about it circadian clockwise, the sun is down. You shouldn't be sleeping in a warm-ish room, even though you want to be warm. You should sleep in a cool room, and there's so many things that go into sleep that we don't necessarily pinpoint as we're thinking about it. But yeah, and deep sleep in particular, that's an actual state. So there's REM sleep where you're dreaming, and then there's deep sleep, which I don't think it's another level of sleep where you're doing restorative work. So I don't know if that's what you meant, is like that level of deep sleep, or if you meant just like not being woken by any distraction, like the technical term of deep sleep, or like the common definition of what we would consider deep sleep. So because there is a technical definition for deep sleep, and you should get in the course of a night, you should get about an hour and a half of each deep sleep and REM sleep. Some of us are more efficient with our sleep, and we can do that in 4 to 5 hours. Those are the people that they'll be like, I don't need that much sleep. It's because they're getting it, they just have, their body and mind have a more efficient way of working with sleep. But most of us need more than that to add up the increments of deep and REM sleep. So usually they say 7 to 9 hours.
I like the idea of efficiently sleeping. I'm going to try really hard to sleep efficiently, which is not going to help me sleep, right? The intention to sleep well is not the same as what activities do I engage in to invite or cultivate sleep. Because I know people who are envious and angry that some people apparently appear to be able to sleep like 4 or 5 hours and function.
Yeah.
And I always, so I don't know that this is true, but I like to believe it. I believe they're faking it, and that it will catch up with them.
They're not.
They're just sleeping effectively.
It's really kind of wild. Yeah, it's not even something they're doing. It's just the way their mind and body works. They can dip into REM and deep sleep for longer periods. Um, and most of us are in and out of deep sleep and light sleep and all throughout the night. That's normal. But they tend to keep their deep sleep and REM in longer chunks. And I'm not one of them either. I'm one of the people that need massive amounts of sleep. Yeah, but we'll talk about sleep. But there's so many pieces that go into sleep in addition to sleep hygiene. I was sharing in one at a nonprofit. I was talking about all the elements that go into having kind of a healthy like mindfulness practice, and one of them is sleep. Like, you need to be well rested. And they did work with how underhoused and homeless people, and one of the men raised their hands, and he was definitely over 6 feet tall, and he said, and they issue them their rooms with their bed that's standard, and he goes, I'm constantly shifting my posture because I can't sleep lengthwise because I'm too tall for the bed. So things like that you never think about, or like sleep apnea, right, Frank? Like, that's one of the things that when we were talking about, because I have to get tested for it. So like, a lot of us don't even know that we have it, right?
We're going to need to stop for tonight, but I just want to highlight again the benefit of mindful awareness is that you notice what's going on. And if it's working for you, that awareness can help accentuate it. And if it's not working for you, the awareness gives you information to encourage you to adjust some things. So I think about, the things around rest is like if you're paying attention and you notice, oh, is this bed too short? Or is the room too hot or too cold or too bright or too dark or too whatever? And then the invitation is make those adjustments, but not in a single night, right? Not like I need to sleep tonight and I can't, because that's the wrong energy. Again, that's the opposite energy of what you would benefit from to sleep. So we're going to need to stop, but I want to acknowledge the request. The sleep discussion is very interesting. Please do sleep as a topic. We will. Of course, everybody will fall asleep during the practice, but that's okay because that's what it's about.
It'd be really great if it was like that was the practice period. Everybody take a
Yeah,
nap.
yeah. So thank you all for being here. We will see you next week. Have a good week. Rest. Rest a lot.